Let's have a closer look at those front pages. We'll start with the Telegraph, Steve.
Loads on the Telegraph. I mean, they talk council tax. We'll talk more about that in a bit. 30 clergy may face sack in abuse scandal, so there is some good news on there. But main story, police in appalling attack on free speech. This is the story about Allison Pearson, who, look, I mean, I don't normally agree with the kind of thing she says, and which means it means something when I think this is appalling. It doesn't matter whether you agree with her or not. What you shouldn't do is do a tweet, then get a knock on the door and think, oh, it's the police have turned up. What's this about? And they say they're investigating in a non-crime hate incident way a tweet from the past. And she says, oh, which tweet? Oh, we can't tell you that. No, because you might work out how to defend yourself. And they says, OK, well, then who's the accuser? And they check the paperwork and go, oh, no, not an accuser, it's a victim. Well, it's game, set and match. You can't defend yourself. They already know it's a victim, so you must be in the wrong.
I mean, they use the word Kafkaesque sometimes, and it's overused and like Orwellian. But this really is as close to Kafka's trial as you can get. It is the sheer vagueness of it is the most sinister aspect.
I'm amazed she's not started to use the word ovular, which I believe they debate about that in there. But this, for me, always just comes down to why are the police being involved in non-crime things, in the same way that mountain rescue shouldn't be involved in non-mountain-related rescue activities. Like, if you've got a non-fire thing happening, don't call the fire brigade. So the police...
Old lady has a fall in the high street and the mountain rescue, generally speaking, don't get involved.
Exactly, that would be a non-mountain fall incident. If ever any of these tweets turn into... Because the new criteria is they shouldn't be recorded unless they're likely to escalate. I'm guessing Alison Pearson wasn't going to go and commit crime. Well, she's busy writing columns that offend people.
It's had a year. It's a year-old tweet. Yeah, so if there were... Perhaps it is like murder, where it has to be a year and a day before you can be sure that it hasn't been murder. You have to die from the action. Yeah. Perhaps with the tweet it's the same thing. If they were waiting to see if it was actually a hate crime incident, but it's actually a non-crime incident.
And she's assuming it's related to tweets that she posted about Hamas's attack on Israel. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, you know, who they attack and who they don't attack. I mean, this is what authoritarian regimes do: is they have a law that everybody could be seen to have broken, so then they can pick and choose who's broken it. And this is kind of what we got here. And I spoke to her last night, and I mean, I do agree with everything she says. I'd follow that woman into the gates of hell. And you know, she's amazing. She's an incredibly strong woman. Obviously, and this is, you know, we might imagine that this is getting all this attention. It's going to be great. It's going to bring down the stupid laws. You know, this is going to make police forces look at how they deal with these things. But the reality is that she's genuinely scared of what could happen next. They've been so vague. She doesn't know. I mean, other people she mentions in the article she wrote yesterday, people go to jail, are held in jail. The process is the punishment for this kind of stuff. We've seen with other people like Marion Miller, who was accused of hate crime for a tweet with a suffragette ribbon, which was perceived to be a noose. I mean, this is all just absolute nonsense. The police should stay well away from policing any form of speech. And thank God for Donald Trump, and thank God for Elon Musk keeping speech free. Donald Trump has said if Europe continues to enforce these authoritarian rules on its citizens and take away its citizens' rights, then they are going to pull out of NATO. So they're using NATO as a tool to sort of project Western values on communist countries, such as, I mean, I can only really describe Britain as a communist country now. You don't get stuff like this in a free, liberal Western country.
I certainly think, I stop short of saying communist just yet, but it certainly has far more sinister echoes of East Germany, the lives of others and that sort of thing than I'm comfortable with. I don't know whether it's significant that Alison Pearson as well is an old-school legacy journalist. She is not a creature of the social media age. Yeah. This is not a woman who has risen to the top, like, I will just say it, for instance, Narinda Kaur, who seems to make a living out of being disobliging on Twitter. I certainly wouldn't call the police on her, but I could see why people would go, oh, my goodness, the world would be a better place without her hideous social media presence. Alison Pearson has written best-selling books and has been a legacy journalist within the Telegraph and other titles, I think, for, 30 years? I mean, it's absurd that a woman of this stature... Really.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an issue here with it possibly being retribution from the police force, because she's been critical of the police force, Essex Police Force, before. She's helped her friend with a domestic violence case, and the police, you know, complained about the language she used. So, I mean, I think we need an investigation to see what the internal comms of the police force are, to see if this is actually sanctioned by higher up as a retributive action.
I couldn't agree more. We have another important story on the front page of the Telegraph, Steve.
Are we going to talk about the assisted dying issue? So this is Wes Streeting, look, when it comes to actually debating the bill, almost a separate story. You'll come up with good reasons for and good reasons against. West Streeting is not in favour of it, but the reason he's come up against it is it will cost money. Yeah. So some of the money that he's dishing out in his NHS, well, you can't have it there if you're going to go and spend it on killing some people. It's the weakest. He says, where's the money going to come from? I don't know, the Department of Work and Pensions, because fewer pensions
maybe it will come from the NHS costs, which will no longer be used on the patient who no longer lives.
Yeah, that's why it's the stupidest argument, isn't it? Whether you're for it.
I mean, it's almost drawing attention to the unspoken motivation that many suspect lies behind the bill.
The savings you're going to make, Wes, is what we're thinking.
I mean, it's literally a question of bending over and pulling out the plug in some instances, isn't it?
You can see the smart meter slow down.
I do find the whole debate, there is a lot of disquieting dystopian edge to it again. Two dystopias on one front page. Some people are saying the Humanist Society today said that if members of Parliament feel that they support the bill in principle but have not been satisfied with its practical application, they should vote for it anyway. Now, that really doesn't sound to me like that's how you pass laws. You're like, yes, I would generally like to see people killed, on the NHS, but I'm not quite sure of the detail yet. I mean,
no, absolutely. And I think
there's
a wider issue of legislation not receiving the same level of scrutiny and debate that it used to receive in the two houses. And I mean, this obviously would in Canada, where they've got a similar assisted dying bill. Yeah. I mean, it's used to save the state money. If somebody's homeless, if somebody needs an expensive operation, they offer it as an option.
Well, as they've said, if somebody has crossed the border from America to get away from Trump because they're depressed.
Would you like us to kill you? Yes. I mean, surely the state shouldn't be, jumping to killing people as a first response. And it's interesting in Canada how, everybody was reassured that it wouldn't be used like that. There'd be all these safeguards, and straight away, pretty much, within months, it's being used to kill young people and
and in
21-year-olds
as well, not just in Canada, which might be acceptably regarded as a strange alien nation. But,
for a minute, I was going to say, which is acceptable. If you're getting rid of Canadians, we're okay with that.
If you see enough moose crossing the road, the world seems strange to you. Can we move on? Staying with Elon Musk and free speech, Leo, as indeed I think we might be throughout the show. He seems to be the Moriarty, as I said, at the centre of the world's news web now. Also, the Manhattan Project de nos jours, apparently.
Yeah. So I've got no idea what any of that meant. But
the Manhattan Project. It was the bomb.
Mixing several different analogies all at once. It's like you got Spider-Man in there, some Greek stuff. Then in the Second World War.
Sherlock Holmes used to say that Moriarty was like a spider at the centre of the web through which all the world's crimes were communicated. And this seems to be how they see Elon Musk these days.
Right.
This is what I think is this idea that he's at the centre. He's almost more than Trumpish. You know what I mean?
He kind of is. I mean, he definitely, I think, swung the election for Trump, possibly even as much as the Amish and that squirrel that got shot did as well.
Yeah.
The squirrel, never underestimate the impact of the state. I mean, what a better example of state overreach and government intrusion could you get than the state executing a squirrel? They can't do anything about illegal immigrants or anything, but they can stamp on a squirrel. And this is what this story is.
There, Alison Pearson, basically.
Yeah. And that's what this story is about. So Trump has named Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to head his Department of Government Efficiency, the Manhattan Project of our time is described as here. And its Department of Government Efficiency is Doge, which, of course, is the sort of mimetic, the meme coin.
The meme coin.
Yeah, so
Doge to the moon.
Yeah, and so they're gonna go through the government and unpick all the bloat and all the waste and properly drain the swamp this time. And who better to do it than Elon Musk? He did it with Twitter. He's done it. He runs incredibly efficient companies that achieve remarkable things. So if there's anybody who can, although he might be working with slightly less exceptional human capital than he is at SpaceX. But Javier Milei has shown how to do it in Argentina. You can literally slash. You can just go in. You don't even need to worry about it. Just fire loads of public sector workers. Nothing changes because most of them are just seat polishers and enjoy the benefit of the taxpayer not having to shove food down their gullet. And this is about more than money. As the state gets bigger, it gets more intrusive, as we saw with Peanut the squirrel getting shot, as we've seen with Allison Pearson getting the whiff of the gulag blown through a letterbox. And, I think also with so many illegal immigrants being sent back, the private sector is going to need these workers. So, I hope some of these people like doing those jobs.
It's going to be great fun watching them attempt to struggle with job expectations in the private sector. There's like a first order and a second order effect here, isn't there? I think, because if you thin out a third of the bureaucracy, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, apparently it costs them trillions in America. So they will be gone, but also there will be a large number of people who are essentially who have benefited from the largesse that their departments distribute, and that will go as well.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's probably part of it. I think a lot of people have said, in terms of these kind of mass deportations that he has in mind, they won't actually be necessary if you just cut the benefits, if you just cut the infrastructure which supports those people's ability to survive. They will go, well, I better go home then.
Yeah, maybe. Look, I mean, it depends what kind of trimming happens. There is a lot of trimming that we shouldn't even be arguing about. This doesn't need to be a right versus left, like getting upset at what Elon will do. Regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, you should want efficiency, because they talk about efficiencies. Surely no one's in favour of inefficiency. I'd love more waste.
They are. There's a third of the deep state are.
Yeah. In general, it's like the populace should think, no, I want the government, regardless of how big it is, to act efficiently, and then you can argue about the size. The one thing I would disagree with is, don't think calling it the Manhattan Project is a good thing.
No.
I mean,
in the sense that it's a huge project which which you have to take a deep breath and undertake, and it's expensive.
Killed
but
a lot of
in
people
no
in the
other
Far
regards.
East. It feels like specifically not good for those two towns.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to move them all to Los Alamos. There's just going to be a huge camp in the middle of the desert where they go,
That
get on
work.
with whatever you fancy, guys.